Exactly 2 years ago today, and by today I mean the day I'm filming this video and probably not the day you're watching it. But anyway, exactly 2 years ago today, a movie came out that is, in my opinion, still the best animated movie ever made, the best Spider-Man movie ever made, and one of my personal favorite movies of all time. In case you didn't read the title of today's video, I am of course talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So all the way back in June of 2018, I saw the trailer for this movie and I was like, meh. Like, it looked fine and I was sure I was going to enjoy it, but I wasn't really super excited for it by any means. It didn't look like anything special to me. Like, the animation looked cool, but I don't know, I just wasn't that excited for it. Then in December of that year when that movie was released, I had some friends come to me and ask me if I wanted to go with them, so I said sure. And again, I didn't really have any expectations for it because I wasn't really super excited for it. I expected it to be good, like I expected to enjoy it well enough, but oh my god, were my expectations completely blown away. Like, with some of my favorite movies of all time, I have gone into watching them with super high expectations, and of course, most of the time, those movies do meet those expectations, but it's just something really special when you go into a movie with super low expectations, not expecting much from it, and your expectations are just completely blown away, which is exactly what happened with me with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. First of all, this movie is 2 years old at this point, so if you still have yet to see it, then go and do so now. It's on Netflix until Christmas Day when they're taking it off for whatever reason. So go and watch that movie and then come back and keep watching this video because I am going to spoil some stuff that happens in the movie in this video. So the movie starts out with a narration from Spider-Man. This Spider-Man being Peter Parker, and he says he's been Spider-Man for about 10 years, and in that time, he's been the only person able to defend New York City. Definitely a little bit of foreshadowing for what's to come. We then meet our main protagonist of the movie, Miles Morales, an average kid with two loving parents who just started a new school. Now, I just love this next scene that follows because it highlights just how much stress and pressure kids are while they're in schools to try and cope with just all the amounts of work that they're given. Anyway, after his first day of school doesn't go so well, Miles seeks comfort in his uncle Aaron Davis, and the two of them go and graffiti an abandoned subway station to blow off some steam. World's greatest uncle for encouraging vandalism, I know. While down in the subway station, Miles gets bitten by a spider that is pretty obviously radioactive, and sure enough, the next day at school, Miles starts developing Spider-Man's powers, which leads to a ton of funny moments, including a less than smooth run-in with a new student who calls herself Gwanda, but it's pretty obvious that she's not who she says she is. Curious about what's happening to him, Miles goes back to the underground subway station to find the spider that bit him, where he ends up in the middle of a battle between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, who is crazy looking in this dimension, by the way. Like, look at this character design, it's awesome. During this fight, Spider-Man ends up getting blasted by this massive beam of energy that we later find out is a collider that is able to open up other dimensions. Him getting blasted causes the collider to explode. When Miles then finds Spider-Man, badly wounded in the wreckage, Spider-Man hands him a flash drive that is able to destroy the collider for good, and then makes Miles promise him to stop it, or else it will destroy the city. After Miles leaves, Kingpin finds Spider-Man and kills him. The city then reacts to Spider-Man's death, because although he was a controversial figure, some calling him a hero and others a vigilante, his death still impacts everyone. I just love this montage following Spider-Man's death because it just shows everyone reacting to his death, and with the music and the camera work, it shows such a complete and total loss of hope. A while later, Miles visits Peter's grave where he finds another older Peter Parker from a different dimension who's been Spider-Man for over 20 years. This Peter Parker has suffered through the loss of Aunt May, the divorce of his wife Mary Jane, and is obviously suffering from depression. After Miles breaks the flash drive given to him by the original Spider-Man, he and this older Peter Parker have to break into Alchemax to steal the data needed to make another one. While there, they encounter a female Doc Ock and have to be aided by Gwen Stacy's Spider-Woman from another dimension after they successfully steal the data. The trio then go to Aunt May's house to make a brand new flash drive where they meet 3 more Spider people. These people being Penny Parker, Spider-Man Noir, and Spider-Ham. Now, I just love the addition of these 3 because their character designs are based off anime, black and white cartoons, and Looney Tunes style cartoons, so it makes an already visually stunning movie even more visually appealing. In order to destroy the collider, they discover that one of them has to stay behind in order to insert the flash drive while the others go back to their right dimensions. Miles offers to stay behind since he is the only one actually from this dimension, and if any of the other spider people end up staying behind, then they will eventually die because their cells can't handle being in a different dimension for too long. However, after being tested by the other spider people, it's clear that Miles isn't ready for that kind of challenge, which is fair considering he's only had his powers for like a day at this point. Miles leaves the group, embarrassed and full of self-pity, and once again goes to his uncle's house for comfort, where he finds out that his uncle is actually the villain known as the Prowler, and he's been working for Kingpin this entire time. Miles then accidentally leads the Prowler back to Aunt May's house, and a huge fight ensues between the Spider People and Doc Ock, Tombstone, Scorpion, and the Prowler, which ends with Kingpin shooting the Prowler when he can't bring himself to kill his nephew Miles. Spider-Man's uncle then dies in an alley from a gunshot wound, and I know what you're thinking, that is totally original and has never been done in a different Spider-Man movie before. Everyone then regroups back in Miles' school dorm, where Miles is feeling extremely guilty for the death of his uncle. To make matters worse, Peter webs up Miles to a chair in order to stop him from coming with them to stop the Collider, because they think Miles will get himself killed since he still isn't ready. But after a quick pep talk from his dad, Miles is finally able to gain some sort of control over his abilities and free himself. After that comes one of my favorite scenes in not just this movie, but in probably any movie. It's a montage of Miles going to Aunt May to get a brand new suit, custom painted by him, and then he finally takes a leap of faith and jumps off a skyscraper to test his powers. The music, the momentum, the artwork, everything just comes together to make a perfect scene that literally gives me goosebumps every single time I watch it because of how good it is. Miles then joins up with the rest of the Spider People in the fight to save New York and stop the Collider. After our heroes defeat most of the bad guys, Miles sends everyone home except for Peter, who still tries to stay behind to sacrifice himself before Miles tells him to go home in an extremely powerful and fulfilling scene where Peter finally agrees to go home and make things right with his wife. That leaves Miles alone to stop the Collider and fight Kingpin, the man who killed the original Spider-Man of his dimension. And just when he almost loses, he remembers that he always has people who have his back, whether it's other Spider People or his family. With this knowledge fueling him, he's able to overpower the Kingpin and stop the Collider to save the city. The movie then ends with Miles saying that anyone can wear the mask. Anyone can be a hero. And that's pretty well the extent of the movie. I've seen this movie literally like 4 or 5 times, and I still love watching it every single time. First of all, the artwork is just beautiful. It's a mixture of CGI and hand-drawn animation that took literally a week for every 10 seconds of footage. That's how much effort and time went into this movie. The animation is distinct and stands out from pretty well any other animated movie that I've ever seen, and it's no surprise that it won the Oscar for Best Animated Film that year. I also love all the little details in the film, like text appearing prominently on screen the same way it would in a comic book, or when it appears in the background to highlight small details. However, my absolute favorite detail about this entire movie is how the entire movie is animated at 24 frames per second, just how pretty well every other movie is shot. However, in some scenes, Miles was only animated at 12 frames per second to make his movement seem even more messy and inexperienced. Then when Miles finally comes into his own as Spider-Man, he starts getting animated at 24 frames per second to visually show that he's finally becoming more confident and capable with his powers. Like, there are not a lot of other animated movies to visually go to such lengths to show such detail. The character designs are also super unique, which is partially thanks to the art style. Kingpin's design was a bit weirdly disproportionate, how his head sits so much lower than it's supposed to and how massive his shoulders are. But it does make sense in the context of the movie, so I don't really hold the design against it, and it's not that distracting. So all the voice actors also do just an amazing job with their characters, especially Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir and John Mulaney as Spider-Ham. I found that every time those two were on screen, it was just hilarious and super entertaining to watch. The soundtrack for this movie is also excellent. What's Up Danger, I'm Not Scared, Way Up. Those songs are still in my workout playlist today, even though they came out like 2 years ago, and they're still some of my favorite rap songs. Obviously, this movie isn't 100% perfect, and as much as I love it, I can still admit that there are flaws with it. Like how Miles manages to get control of his powers really quickly and is just as good with them as the other Spider People when he's only had like a few days with them, whereas they've had years of experience and training to hone their abilities. I also found it kind of funny how the world doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man until after he dies, yet there are comic books explaining his origin story. And even if they didn't know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, they still drew a kid that looks pretty exactly like him, a white teenager with glasses and brown hair. So even if they didn't know that that was Peter Parker, they still make a lot of assumptions about his appearance, which turn out to be correct. Honestly, besides those two things, there's not really much else I found off about this movie, and even those two things, I'm just being a bit nitpicky because they really didn't distract you from the amazing story and artwork. If I did have to rate this movie, I would probably give it a 97, which is coincidentally the same score that Rotten Tomatoes gave the movie. However, I think it's just because of how great the movie is. It's pretty well a perfect movie, and it deserves a really high score. In my personal opinion, this is the best Spider-Man movie that has ever been made so far. You can have your Spider-Man 2s and your Spider-Man Homecomings, I'll take Spider-Verse any day. And it sucks that we have to wait 2 years still for the sequel. However, if the sequel is even half as good as the original, then I know that it'll be worth the wait. Now let me know if you've seen this movie and you agree with me about how amazing it is, or if you think that I'm way off base. Also, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.